Started. Welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all, and I see more people are joining. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. This is the first in our series of Strengthening Community Economies webinar series. It's going to be rolling out over the next few months. And today we're talking specifically about social innovation and social finance strategy. So I'm going to share my screen just to give you an idea of what's on the docket for today. Okay, there we go. So this is, today's webinar called Unblocking Social Innovation, Empowering Communities, and we've got a great lineup of speakers. So you have it there. We're going to start with Béatrice Alain, who's the Executive Director of the Chantier de l'économie sociale, about just sort of broad introduction to social innovation and social finance and why it's important right now in this moment in time. Then we're going to have 3 examples of social innovation and social finance initiatives that are making a difference in communities across Canada. So we have Wendy Keats, Executive Director with the Co-operative Enterprise Council of New Brunswick. We have Victor Beausoleil, who's the co-founder and Executive Director of Social Economy Through Social Inclusion, or CEDC. And we have Rosalind Lockyer, who's the founder and Executive Director of PARO, Center for Women's Enterprise. So they're all going to talk about, there are some specific examples of social innovation that are happening on the ground. And then I'll come back near the end to talk about the current window of opportunity we have and to kind of give you a little bit of a teaser for an upcoming campaign that we'll be launching later this week. And then there'll be some time for questions, and then we'll finish up within an hour, so by 2 o'clock Eastern time. So that's our plan for today. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to pass it over to Béatrice to get us started. So go ahead, Béatrice.
Hi, thank you for having me today. Okay, so to introduce social innovation and social finance, that was my mandate. I think social innovation in particular is a scary new word for something that's been around for a very long time, which is that people are thinking on the ground, actors on the ground have to think about how they can organize their resources differently to do things more effectively or more inclusively or more sustainably. So it's how society collectively, because it's social innovation, it's not individually, is coming together to do things better. So we've always been doing this, and I have children at home today. I was thinking about parents who are constantly trying to figure out how to do things more efficiently. But I think we're talking about it today for a couple of reasons. One, there's very much an understanding that our model is not sustainable socially and environmentally, so we need to be doing things differently. And 2, I think is a little bit of a pushback against the notion of technology, that our problems are going to be solved through technology. So it's not just technological innovation, there's definitely social innovation. And at the same time, using that language of what's cool and sexy, there's always the risk of sort of social washing. We're going to have a new fancy word to keep doing things amongst experts. And the example that I use is the example of soap. What changed the world was not the invention of soap, was the social paradigm of everyone having to wash their hands, of being looked at badly by your family members in your community and everyone, you don't wash your hands. So that's the social innovation. And you can't have technological innovation without a social application and integration of that. What are some of the needs that we have right now? And obviously in this current context, there's even more of a need to do things better, a need for, obviously, yes, we need to do better. What are some of the needs, I think, for effective social innovation? One, as I said, is inclusion, because how are we going to have collective action or answer collective needs, the needs of society, if we don't have a pulse on what the needs or priorities are? So I may think that this person needs new shoes. They may not care about their shoes and want books instead or whatever. We need to have all of the people around the table. And again, this work has been going on from the beginning of time. Community organizers have been bringing people together to discuss what is needed in the community, what should we prioritize, what can we do about it together collectively. And you can contrast that with, we are seeing more and more social innovation experts. So sometimes there are techniques like Post-its and Legos that'll help some needs be expressed, but I would argue that the fundamental knowledge is the knowledge of your community and the trust to have them engaged and speaking effectively of what they want and what they need. We also need information about what's worked or failed elsewhere, right? So that we're not reinventing the wheel, each community on our own. And the challenges that we face are important enough that we should have that broad understanding and to be inspired and to build and to adapt from what's working. And we also need resources. I think the reason we're talking about this is there's a real press to government to say you're supporting R&D for technology, you need to be supporting R&D for actual society needs and actions. So there's a need for government, well, there's a need for resources to gather and think, which is oftentimes community organizations, what they're doing on the ground. There's need to resources to test things. So how can we develop and test new models, new initiatives, new ways of doing things when programs are often very rigid in the conditions that they have or the results that they expect? And how can we have resources to extend or multiply initiatives? Some initiatives need to grow to scale. Some will never be a bigger scale than that community, but should be inspiring and multiplied in other communities. So that calls on a role for government to fund social innovation, to recognize social innovation through programs, through purchasing, and to enable social innovation in the ways that they operate, which speaks in and of itself to the importance of co-constructing policy. So when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about being on the cusp, on the developing edge of what is possible, how we've imagined things. And that calls on, you can't expect a civil servant in the capital to know what's out there and to understand all of the implications of that. We need to be having constant dialogue with actors on the ground to say, look what we've developed, we're testing this out, it seems to be working quite well. However, there are barriers here and here. Why don't we do this to increase its impact or increase its inclusivity or et cetera? So there's really even more in areas of innovation, a need for dialogue, for constant dialogue. And then the question of resources, which links to the social finance piece, there is definitely a need for resources specific to create, to develop, to scale. In Quebec, we have quite a particular and I would say relatively successful experience in developing a social finance ecosystem. And one of the defining characteristics is looking at how are we, the key question is how do we develop initiatives on the field rather than how do we find initiatives that are of interest to social investors. So rather than looking at what investors feel like doing today, whether that's environmental stuff or women or whatever, what is happening on the ground that is of interest and of need to communities, and how can we adapt our financial tools to support those? In brief, a couple of characteristics of why it's worked in Quebec. One, it's a very well-connected ecosystem, so those actors work together. On average, the projects that are financed have 7 investors co-investing, which means that for each investor, there's a lower risk, but for the project, there's a bigger amount that's put on that project. And second, they have developed common criteria to analyze those projects. And the first central part is around collective ownership as sort of a proxy for accountability of that project and buy-in and local control. But the other important requirement is local buy-in. So me and my 4 buddies may have a great idea for a co-op. If no one else in the community has heard about it or supports it, it will not get financed. So I need to show that I have gone to other actors in the community. They say, yes, indeed, this project is really important, which means that someone in Montreal may not think that a co-op brewery in this village is a very important thing. But if all the other actors say, yeah, it's really important, we have no local meeting space, it's going to revitalize our territory, our culture, etc., that's a good reason to support that as something that's going to enable community well-being. And I would maybe conclude on that to say it's been the social economy that's been developed in Quebec through, amongst other things, social finance is really a factor of territorial development. So creation of jobs, but also local services, cultural vitality, et cetera, that I think is particularly valued in a current in times of crisis like today. And which is why we're looking very attentively to possible policies or initiatives at the federal level and at the Quebec level that are going to continue to reinforce this collective empowerment. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks so much, Béatrice, for that great introduction. So now we'll head over to Wendy Keats with the Cooperative Enterprise Council in New Brunswick to share an initiative they have happening. So go ahead, Wendy.
Great, thanks, Raissa, and thanks, Béatrice. You made a lot of my points for me, so I'll be able to be quicker, which is good in my case. I was once introduced as the master of the compound complex conjunctive sentence, which means I can say anything well, I just can't say it briefly. So I've put together a few slides here to try to keep me on track. So I'm the executive director of the Cooperative Enterprise Council based out of New Brunswick and working across Atlantic Canada. We are a community economic development organization, and our mandate is to help build healthy, inclusive communities and local economies using cooperatives and social enterprise as tools for collective action. So I'm going to tell you today about a specific initiative that we have going on here. It's called the Youth Partnership Initiative. While components of it were planned pre-COVID, COVID certainly required us, I guess, to pivot and into something that was more collaborative. So it is this very strategic partnership approach to the engagement of youth and the community at large in building a post-COVID economy that works for the good of all people and the planet. It's really about engaging people in collective ownership and in democracy and civil society. And we have a really special focus on populations that are traditionally excluded from the economy and from society. It really recognizes that we're living in a new world now. The world was already changing, but COVID has really struck home that the solutions that we have are going to need to be really innovative and very proactive, and we need to build on what works and use best practices, while at the same time making sure that we create space for creativity and for spinning off new ideas. But I think that one of the things that we all know now, and we knew before, this is nothing new to the community, it's just really been highlighted because of COVID, the need to be strategic and to maximize our resources and reduce duplications and break down those silos and work collaboratively towards common goals that we all share. In this initiative, we have over 40 partners, and we actually have quite a few more than that, but 40 partners that are very actively engaged. And they represent sort of all segments of the community, from universities and colleges through to all kinds of community organizations, both large and small, that represent often vulnerable populations or areas of specific interest, whether that's the environment or local food. And we have a lot of cooperative and social enterprise development folks and business people and social finance experts and so on at the table. And the idea is to really pool our resources and our knowledge and learn together. What has evolved out of that is we call Yippee, Youth Partnership Initiative. It has several components to it, and you'll see sort of around the peripheral that all of these things in some way are directly connected to an ecosystem that is looking at building knowledge, skills, and capacity of the community, informing public policy and programs, promoting sustainable, inclusive models, and really focusing again on innovation and best practices. So we currently have what we call 8 nodes in Atlantic Canada. And we have about 50 youth right now, more coming all the time, that are getting engaged in their community and issues that they're passionate about. And we provide a wide array of supports to help engage them, help reduce barriers, and just help to allow them to be very creative in developing initiatives. And there are a number of cooperative and social enterprise projects that are spinning out of this all over Atlantic Canada. We really have had to put a major focus on online learning and engagement. I think that we're all sick and tired of Zoom already, and we've got a long ways to go. And we're really looking at how do you engage people? So we have youth in leadership positions that are helping us figure out the new technologies and the new learning tools and methods to help build that knowledge and skills. We have a significant focus on local and social procurement. We work closely with the Center for Local Prosperity, and we're having some very promising discussions and action in terms of shifting some government procurement dollars and tender spending to cooperatives and social enterprise and locally owned small businesses. We have a component of the project where we're actively looking at all of the businesses that are closing because of COVID, but all of the ones that were closing before that because of the pending, if not current, crises around retiring business owners. And so we have a significant focus on how do we transition some of those businesses into cooperatives and social enterprises that are owned by youth and in particular marginalized populations. We also have, and by the way, that that project is hosted by CEDNet, as is the Pan-Canadian Community Investment Project that's connected to this, where we're looking at building local pools of capital using, in our case, some amazing economic development tax credit programs that we have available in the Maritimes that are very appealing to investors and individuals that are interested in building their local economies and local businesses. And so often what we have are a lot of really good ideas, but as we all know in the social economy, trying to get the money to move them forward from traditional sources is nearly impossible. So these are some innovative new ways of building pools of capital to help move these initiatives forward. So just in terms of, you know, why the Investment Readiness Program and the Social Finance Fund is so important now, and always was, but even more now. So I think we're all pretty familiar with the way that funding works. We get a year or 2 years. If we're really lucky, we get 3 years to build out some very innovative programs, and that's just not going to cut it. The demand is there. It's increased because of COVID. Again, it was something that was already, you know, really starting to build, people looking for new solutions and new ways of doing things and different kinds of business models and more ownership and engagement in businesses and community. But since COVID, it has just exploded. And I know that at the Co-op Council and many organizations like ours, we cannot keep up to the demand. People looking to establish new kinds of businesses, co-ops and social enterprises. And that is only going to continue to grow. And the IRP and the Social Finance Fund are critically important to building the capacity of community to make this shift. So, you know, it's a culture shift. It's been happening, you know, for a while, but very slowly. And so there's a lot of organizations that are really interested in this model, and they want to move forward in a different way and not be reliant on grants and government that changes every 4 years. But there is a need. It takes time and it takes resources to build that capacity and those skills. And the IRP, quite honestly, my sense was it was a drop in the bucket to what is really needed. And so, you know, I think the message to government really needs to be that there's tremendous opportunity. not only for achieving all the social outcomes that we're looking for, but also to reduce government costs, because we know that prevention and programs actually cuts taxpayer costs. And I guess the other, thing that we are hearing and feeling is, traditional financing was almost impossible to get for many co-ops and social enterprise and community-based initiatives before. But now it's pretty much impossible from traditional sources. So, they've just shut down funding and any startups in Atlantic Canada anyhow. And so it's really important now when we have this opportunity for innovation, and the community is really what's driving innovation right now. It just blows my mind. I've been 40 years in this, and I've never seen anything like it. How community has pulled together and come up with very creative and very practical solutions to the issues that we're facing today. They're excited about it. They've got ideas, they're moving them forward, but they need to be able to have the money. And so the Social Finance Fund, the more innovative, creative, social finance funds and things like our Community Economic Development and Investment Tax Credit programs. These are so critically important now, and not as something that we can think about in 2 or 3 years from now. Government needs to get the message that this needs to happen right away if they want to maximize what's possible out there and minimize the negative impacts of COVID and just the economy in general. So I'll just leave it at that, Raissa. Hope I stayed within my 10 minutes.
Great, thanks, Wendy. So if you could just stop your screen share. Great. Okay, thanks so much, Wendy. That was a good example of what's happening on the ground, and also the potential of what could be happening if we could unblock more of this stuff. So that's excellent. So we're going to go now over to Victor Beausoleil, who's going to talk about the work that his group is doing, social economy through social inclusion. So Victor, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Raissa. And it's beautiful to see so many people in the room. I give thanks to my ancestors and so many others who paved the way for me to be here today. So with that being said, my name is Victor Beausoleil. I'm a husband, a father, and I'm currently the executive director of SETSI, Social Economy Through Social Inclusion. The premise of the organization is very simple. We identified that there's a lot going on internationally and nationally as well as the economy and capitalism, and folks on the margins and periphery of the economy from very distinct and vulnerable populations, not only were getting the short end of the stick, they weren't at the table at all, which is troublesome in terms of the national discourse and the international discourse when it comes to social innovation. I'm a firm believer that social innovation is about solving social problems. And when you look at all the subsets of social innovation, whether it be social finance, social procurement, social economy, a lot of these, even community economic development and the cooperative movements, a lot of these subsets were organizing ways and means to better organize our economic relationships. And more importantly, traditional financial models weren't engaging everybody. So with that being said, it was fascinating to me when I learned recently at a conference about the Community Investment Act in 1977. Hold on for one second. Recently, I learned about the Community Investment Act in 1977 in the United States from a panel I was on last week, because I try my best to never say no to these things, once again, because the national discourse and the international discourse completely actually is absence of people of African descent, which is unfortunate. And during that conversation, 2 of my colleagues brought up the work of basically civil rights activists that were African Americans that pushed, and some of them even died, for legislation to be shifted specifically around economic development. And an act was passed in 1977 that even impacts us here in Canada. So right now in 2020, for there to be such a lack of diversity in some of the aforementioned ecosystems, I felt was problematic. Hence the reason why myself, my colleagues, and many others ventured out across Ontario and Quebec engaging people of African descent primarily as it relates to social procurement, social innovation, social economy, social finance, breaking down the terminology, breaking down the acronyms, creating an understanding of the linkages between traditional models of organizing economic relationships, like Susu's, Isusu's, Kigali's, Hagbas, and things that many people in almost every culture have practiced. So at CEDC, we facilitate monthly webinars that are always well attended, always over 100 people in the session. We try our best to have it in the evening time, which is hard for me based off where I am, to make sure it's accessible. We also run an incubator in partnership with the incredible organization CEDNet, where we support 15 SPO leaders, social purpose organizers, with once a week one-on-one mentorship. This relates to the relationship with the Canadian Revenue Agency, bookkeeping, putting in place CRM systems, organizing their IP, supporting them with human resources, governance, fiduciary responsibilities. So one-on-one mentoring from the CEDC staff, as well as a peer-led model that happens once a month, and they get access to our webinars. And this was funded by ESDC, and we're grateful for their contribution and support. CEDC currently is an IRP partner. IRP stands for Investment Readiness Program. I'm just saying that for those that may not, I'm noticing sometimes we use a lot of acronyms in the ecosystem and not everyone's familiar with them. So we run an incubator. We also facilitate an accelerator run by my colleague Ryan O'Neill-Knight. It's for folks that are actually a little bit further ahead as it relates to their SPO. We also are launching in 3 days a microloan fund, a $250,000 microloan fund in partnership with Alternative Savings, as well as the Dream Legacy Foundation and the Afro-Caribbean Business Network. This is to mitigate some of the impacts of COVID on many people of African descent across Ontario primarily. And that loan fund is for SMEs and SPOs between $500 and $25,000. It's not pure lending, it's at 1.25%, but that's as good as we can negotiate. We're still fighting for some non-repayable loans attached to that program, but once again, I'm kind of a hippie in the conversation. Everyone's trying to figure out a way to make sure we cover the administration. And as the ED of CEDC, I sit at the NIP table, the National Impact Investment Practitioner table, with my colleague Lori and some others that are doing some phenomenal work. As well, I sit at the PC table, the People-Centered Economy table, which is also doing some incredible work nationally. So with all that being said, that kind of gives context on CEDC itself. Myself as, I guess, an actor in the constellation, have a lot of gripes with various institutions, organizations that I'm not going to name today because I have class. But with that being said, regardless of how diplomatic I am, I think it's very important that we look at three things if we're going to move forward the needle around just any of what we're talking about, especially social finance. We have to find better ways to engage Canadians. And when I say Canadians, I mean it's imperative that we find ways and means to facilitate workshops, webinar sessions, because the average Canadian does not get this stuff, does not understand it, not familiar with the terms, and doesn't know almost any of the organizations. So that's troublesome. So engaging Canadians, especially those in the margins of the economy, is very important. Secondly, I believe that we need to hold accountable the 1%. And when I say the 1%, I'm not talking about the 1% income earners in Ontario or Quebec. I'm talking about the 1% in the aforementioned ecosystems. There's organizations, institutions that have been around for a very long time in social finance, in social economy, in the cooperative movements, in the CV space, that actually have the ability, just looking at their reserves, to actually do some deep, meaningful work that's self-determined without governments. I remember my colleague a few weeks ago said, we're richer than we think. He used the Scotiabank reference. And if you look at the amount of reserves that many organizations have, it's imperative that we actually rethink the model of the sunset clause. Do all organizations need to exist forever? And more importantly, if they do plan to exist forever, the amount of reserves that many organizations have almost has this expectation like they're going to fail. If you haven't failed in 20 years, I'm pretty sure you're good. You can create different policy around the amount of reserves you have so that you can find ways and means to support new emerging players in the ecosystem to create what? Greater inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And third but not least, I believe that we need to engage the permanent governments. I see my colleague, I think I saw Rabia or Robin Weisner or someone, ESDC and many departments have incredible staffers that get this stuff. Building and cultivating relationships with the folks that are, because remember, I was president when Minister Eric Hoskins launched this big social enterprise initiative in Ontario many years ago, and that kind of bottomed out. If you look at the perf right before Doug Ford, so politicians are very ephemeral, they're very transient. They may leave a file, but there is folks on the bureaucratic side that have been working on this stuff for years that get it and that are sometimes allies. How do we build deeper, stronger relationships with them? And how do we get them the intellectual property they need to be able to internally advocate on behalf of all the aforementioned ecosystems? I think that's it for me. I know that I don't have a lot of time. I did take a note that I think collective empowerment, and this was to our brilliant colleague Béatrice's point, collective empowerment is important, but it's sustainable and equitable if it's diverse. So collective empowerment alone can't be the target. It must, for it to be sustainable and equitable, it has to be diverse. And yeah, I think, oh yeah, and then in terms of engaging Canadians, I think that we all have to understand the art of invitation. I think Indigenous communities have done very well in articulating how they want to be respected, received, engaged. I think that the African Canadian community, or people of African descent, regardless of where we are in Canada, and there's over 650,000 of us in Ontario, but we have to find better ways of articulating how we want to be engaged, and more importantly, actually, if we're not inviting, kind of invite ourselves sometimes. And that's a challenge that I face. Even I, just to be very open and candid, I actually caught flack from both 3 elders and 4 members of my organization because of the flyer that was put out for this event. And that's a whole nother story I'll talk to you about later, Mike. But the fact remains that there are people that are allies that are putting their necks on the line all the time to try and find ways and means to build a better, healthier ecosystem. And we have to find ways and means to engage them in a meaningful way, and it can't be tokenistic. So I really give thanks to partners like CEDNet, like Ellie. I can name a lot of partners that are doing great work, and I'm really thankful to be invited and to contribute in any way that I can. Thank you.
Great, Victor. Thanks so much for that and talking about some of your work and those. I'm going to probably later on pick up on that, the piece about engaging everyday people when I get into the campaign that we're going to be launching later this week. So last but not least, we have Rosalind Lockyer. And Roz, I'm going to get your slides ready here. Just a second. Okay, Roz, go ahead.
Okay, so while we're getting started here on the slides, I want to open with saying thank you very much and welcome to everyone who came today. It's so good to see so many people interested in social enterprise. So I think we've made more of I think we've done a good job of reaching out to our sector and all the organizations across the country working on social enterprise and social finance. So we just got to move a little bit further, like Victor was saying. But when I put my finger up like this, this means nothing, only Raissa's going to move my slide. So why social enterprise? Well, let's start with where we are right now. The rise of the coronavirus pandemic has exposed massive inequalities and sparked a growing conversation around gender equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I think we need to look at that in the context of social enterprise and social finance, and how social enterprise and social finance often is the answer for governments to look at as for solutions. So the pandemic has made government more aware probably not for the right reasons, because it's all about the economy, but they're more aware of the fact that unpaid household and elder and childcare duties are disproportionately taken on by women in our society. And they have also been identified as those that have had the most economic impact, negative impact on their lives. So we were talking before we started this event, because we had various people on our site here that were wondering how they were going to manage with the children running around and the pets running around as they were presenting remotely from home. And that's, and talking about the fact that women have been innovative for many years on how to handle change in their lives and how to work within doing a lot of tasks and socially and economically trying to work for sustainability in their household while still rearing and children at the same time as looking after elders and making sure that they were cared for. And then trying to carry on their careers or their businesses or whatever else they need to do to carry on their lives. And PARO's always been very aware of these inequalities, and the most effective tools that we've used have been around social enterprise and social finance. And when we look at micro enterprise, and that's probably what the social enterprise that we're probably best known for are the PARO peer lending circles. And that is a social enterprise where women come together, which helps break down the isolation that comes from the work that they're doing, and also gives them some peer support and encouragement and mentoring and networking opportunities, but at the same time provides them with funds to do their micro enterprises. And we have 184 peer lending circles now operating in Ontario, which has made us the largest peer lending circle network, certainly the women-centered peer lending circle network in North America. So that's a social enterprise that has worked really well and is not funded directly from anyone. It's part of the infrastructure that we use to do all our projects and programs. So we have used social enterprise for many years to support marginalized women in growing their micro enterprises and integrated that into the work that we're doing with our circles. We have found that social enterprise is a really good way to build confidence and skills through the involvement in building their circles, but also other social enterprises. Because when we go to build a social enterprise within PARO, we get everyone involved. We get our partners involved. We get the women's businesses involved, and we build a social enterprise. The social enterprise that we have built have been a way to help sustain PARO, but also the individual social enterprises that we're building that we use to support women in whatever they're doing. And you'll see that as we talk about, but the social enterprises provide us with the tools that we need and the activities that we need to support the women in what they're doing. And it's mostly around their participation. So the participation of the women and the partners are crucial in doing these projects. So there you go. And that's, that was explained really well. What I'm saying was explained very well in this article that came from the newspaper. And when we're talking about getting the message out to the general public, partnerships are huge. You take, for our peer lending circles, we partner with most of the majority of the CFDCs, Community Futures Development Organizations in Northern and Eastern Ontario, but also with alternative savings credit unions. So, excuse me, that includes a lot of people. But in our community, if we can use the media, whether it's print media or social media or radio, television, to get the message out, because you can see in writing this article, they talked about how this social enterprise, which was the PARO Presents store, was helping women and helping the community, and how it was involved with the community. And the city had a strategic plan that part of their strategy was quality of life diversified economy and regional networks. So that was part of their strategy. And they wrote this success story as supporting all of these various areas. So they got it. The city, a municipality got it, and they were putting it out to the community members about how social enterprise was supporting the community. So I think the message is there. We just need to make the effort to get it out. And it could be a national campaign to put that. And right now, fast forward is probably a good way to say it, because that's where we are. So to tell you a little bit more about that particular social enterprise, we'll look at it. It's called PARO Presents. It's been around since 2002. And I would say the ingredients of success for that particular social enterprise, which is a retail training outlet, really, that's what it is. It has a storefront, but we also use social media to sell things. We started by working with the women to plan and develop the framework and the various processes that we needed to carry on and the forms that we need to do the work. So that took a few months to do. And we also involved partners in that, like the Canadian Women's Foundation, the local CFDC, the local EDC, the municipality, and so on. So everyone knew this work was going on. And then we got the initial seed money. And this is where I think that the government needs to come in, is there needs to be an initial seed money for sure to develop the whole project. So you need curriculum, you need to hire experts, you need to set up your facility, build in the accountability framework and whatever other resources you need for that particular social enterprise. So there's the capacity building piece, but there's also the initial startup piece. And there also often needs to be a willingness on the part of a mother organization to provide the support is needed for the various players to manage and operate the store. But often it is also the training. So our social enterprise PARO Present provides a training forum for women who have businesses on how to better market their products and how to run a retail store and how to market that retail store. So Raissa. Yeah, so there's just some pictures, and the one at the top right is the store won the Status of Women for Eastern Ontario Award from Seroptimus International, recognizing the work that we were doing with women throughout, at that time, Northern Ontario. But we have products in the store now from all over Ontario. Now, Accelerated Access was a totally different social enterprise, and we still carry on that as well. And we started that by doing feasibility and focus groups and involving, again, the women, and of course, women in business in our case, and also community organizations and members. And we came up with a 5-year logic framework and business plan toolkit and plan for sustainability. So that's been basically the plan where we start. That also gets community buy-in when you're doing it. So that really helps. So, so you can, I think you need to click it again. That's pretty well what I was saying before this. And so you have various things that I think a social enterprise overcomes quite well when dealing with microenterprise, is helping them market their own microenterprises is a big part of that, but also it teaches them how to overcome challenges by working together in their community and learning how to network and to share and collaborate in their communities so that they can build their businesses. Excuse me, my throat is dry. But I think when you're doing social enterprise, it's a key piece. If you look at businesses that survive and survive well, even during this time of the pandemic, they have been the ones that have been community builders as well, that they're integrated and networked and connected in their community, and that gets them through the bad times. So with accelerated access, the second social enterprise we were talking about here, what we do there is take what we have learned from building and operating PARO and sharing how to do that with other organizations across Canada. And we've been doing that one probably since about 2004. Both are sustainable social enterprises, as are the circles. All three of those are sustainable social enterprises that work within all the projects and programs that we do. The one that hasn't been sustainable has been what we call SENO, Social Enterprise for Northern Ontario. And that one was a community-led initiative. PARO was the lead organization in it. And we were providing grants and loans to other social enterprises starting up, both for-profit and not-for-profit. But we weren't far enough along the road to sustainability. So when the province pulled the operating funds, we weren't there. We didn't have the resources to be able to carry on. We may be able to, if the federal government carries on with their social finance program that they've promised, hopefully we'll be able to get the resources that we need to carry that one on, because we were actually starting up quite a few social enterprises, probably, probably about 10 to 20 a year across Northern Ontario. So that was quite a few, and many of them are continuing to this day. But I'd like to close in saying that I think that government now is poised at the point where they're going to look at how to resolve the many challenges that this pandemic has brought to the forefront. I think we and the government are at an inflection point. We have to find a better way, and government must meet this call to support and make change to the inequalities that have become we've all become hugely aware of the inequalities of our society through being put through the challenges of this pandemic. I think we should put it out to government that this is a solution. Social enterprise, social finance can be part of the solution if we're to thrive in our society, both economically and personally as well as individuals. And I think there can be long-standing successes with social enterprise. And I think we've shown that with the ones that we've done. And there's many, many more across the country that are the same. So thank you.
Great, Roz. Thank you very much. So that's, yeah, this was good. What we wanted to do was, there's been a few terms we've been using throughout so far, which social innovation, social enterprise, social economy, and lots of these terms, if you're new to the sector or new to the ecosystem, they don't really mean anything. So that was one of the things we wanted to do today, was to give people a sense of, what does that mean, social innovation? And the way I think about it is really, it's just, people in a community coming together and thinking outside the box to solve whatever the issues are their communities facing. And so the government right now, that's social innovation is the term they use, social innovation and social finance. And we do have a window of opportunity right now with the government to move this forward. So I'm just going to share some more slides again here as we wrap up this last part. So we had in 2018, there was a co-creation steering group that included government and civil society experts within the ecosystem that came out with a fantastic 12 recommendation report, which Mike shared earlier, the link to in the chat, that talked about, you know, how can we move all this forward? How can we make social innovation and social finance a reality, or more, I guess, mainstream across the country? And it talked about procurement and capacity building and financing and ecosystem development. Anyway, all kinds of different things. And then in 2018, sort of right on the heels of that, the federal government did announce a $755 million social finance fund and a $50 million investment readiness program, which a couple of people have mentioned already. But the problem is that that $755 million announced in 2018 hasn't rolled out at all yet, even though now in particular would be a good time to roll it out, because there's, you know, organizations can really do good work with it on the ground. The investment readiness program is set to expire in March, has not been renewed or has not been rolled into a more permanent capacity building program, which is what we'd like to see. And there hasn't been any action on the remaining recommendations of those 12 recommendations in the report. So we do feel like there's a window of opportunity here to push for this for the 2021 budget. So the budget that's going to be announced in the spring or February, I guess. It's not spring anywhere I've ever lived, but they call it the spring budget. And Minister Hassan with ESDC and Minister Freeland with Finance are the ones that hold the keys to moving this forward. So the pieces are all in place. The recommendations are already there. They're just, we just need to make it happen. So CEDNet is going to be launching a campaign in the next few days. This campaign is targeting, we're going to be asking all of you folks, as well as anyone in our networks and your networks, and really as many people as possible, to talk to your MPs about this social innovation and social finance strategy. Talk to them about the kind of work that it can unblock in your community. And we're going to be making it quite easy for folks with some key talking points and links to examples. So if you are able to talk to your MP, that would be fantastic. That's the high impact kind of ask. There's also going to be a quick and easy letter writing campaign, sort of one of those click and send things to send to your MP. And what we're asking MPs to do to not only raise their awareness about social innovation and social finance in Canada and what's happening in their ridings in that realm, but also for them to put pressure on those two ministers. So to put pressure on Minister Hassan and Minister Freeland to have budget allocations for this in the spring, the February budget. So as I say, that's going to be launched in the next few days, hopefully this week. So we'll make sure that everyone that registered for this webinar gets the details of that. And I think that was it. That's what we wanted to share with you for today. So I'm going to stop my screen share and we'll open it up. We have a few minutes for any questions that anyone has. So if you do have questions, you can either type them into the chat or just unmute yourself and ask. So,
hi, everyone. I'll just throw in a first question, waving from Toronto. My work crosses the spectrum, but in the last 7 months, that resulted in founding Save Small Business, which was really key in moving the ball on Main Street local business. So I've had the experience over the last 7 months of engaging with ministers and media and various staffers. Appreciate the folks from ESDC joining on this. What is it going to take? I mean, this is not a big ask. We were able to get $3 billion for small businesses that needed help on rent relief. What is it going to take right now? I mean, this is not a huge amount of money. We need to think about the leveraging of the private sector to make it 2x or 3x in foundations and other partners. But what do we see as the key barrier? Is it just capacity for government to act on what's truly been committed already and should be rolling out the door? Or is there other major barriers we need to think about?
Béatrice, do you want to take a stab?
I think that there's an understanding that this is important work, but I think the margins are a little bit blurry about what we're talking about. So that's one challenge in having dedicated resources is, are we putting resources to collective enterprise, community economic development enterprises, social enterprise, marginalized communities or groups, and who defines where the barriers of all of that is? And I think another challenge then that gets mixed up into that is that it's, I think the heart of the work and the need is very necessary and documented, but I think there is a tendency of social washing. I think that there are a lot, for example, of big enterprises. We saw it before the crisis, all these multinationals that had this big declaration about we are going to support a better world and didn't, in effect, in COVID. And so how do we, for example, leverage more resources for these actors on the ground, which need those resources to be doing more, without giving way to those who have resources dictate the terms, and then we're not really innovating anything, for example. So I think the need is great enough that we need to be ambitious about what we want, and the heart of that is redistributing power and resources back into communities. But to do that, it requires collective action, because most of those actors don't have that. And that, from Quebec, certainly the experience in Quebec has been having common vocabulary, or having a common discussion about where our priorities are and how to get there, and moving collectively was really important, rather than each actor going off and saying it in their own terms, to their own in their own interlocutors. So for example, the effort here of CEDNet of saying, can we all work together to raise awareness about this opportunity of SIFS, even though it may not be the #1 priority for every actor on this call, that it's important for everyone on this call, means that if we can all put in the time to do that, we're carrying a message that many people care about this strategy, the resources that are coming out of it, and also the ways are committed to working with government on the ways that they're going to be deployed. Because it's not just, I think, about having more resources, it's about asking for those resources to be used differently. And as you say, in order to leverage other things, but also to be effective and inclusive, as been said.
Thanks, Béatrice. I wonder if Victor, Roz, or Wendy, do you have anything you wanted to add to that, to Béatrice's answer?
I hear what you're saying, Beatrice, and I know what Victor is referring to it as well. And it's, you know, for example, we all probably, those of us who've been around a long time, can put a small amount of money into various things if we're doing it collectively together. And CEDNet knows that to be true with some of the projects that they're doing. So I think, you know, people might be frightened off a bit, especially as a not-for-profit, when they think they might have to put 100,000 in, but maybe, you know, smaller amounts when they come from several, we can do a lot of good work. So I think that in itself is a good example that Victor put out of how we can collaborate, because we've always been talking about it and doing promoting to our MPs and so on. I'm not saying that that's not valuable, but sometimes we need to share resources as well to get things going and get the word out, whether it's a national marketing campaign or a project with activities that are going to reach common goals together. So I would add that, second that, I think, with Victor and Beatrice, that we need to get money on the ground. So all organizations, diverse organizations across the country can play a part, because that's where the innovation comes from, not doing Beatrice is having fun with her cat there. Her cat needs attention.
My cat's very interested in the social innovation strategy.
Very interested.
Victor, did
so
you?
It's yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, just to be clear, I am interested in self-determined models, but I'm still not letting the government off the hook. at the end of the day, we do need representation for our taxation. We should have access to this capital that was announced in the Fall Economic Statement in 2018, so that all the ecosystem actors can continue to do the great work that they're doing. Hence the reason why SETC has been very vigilant at the NIP table, the PCE table, as well with the impact response work that Adam from SVX and CSI. So we've pressed just as hard as our colleagues. So to answer your question, Michael, I don't know what's going on, to be honest with you. SETC was founded in York Southwestern, which is the same riding that Minister Hussein sits in. We have a great relationship with his staffers. We've engaged in, I think, Minister Hussein's working hard. I think there was about 3 meetings we had 2 months ago. They're all on Saturdays, and he's a family man. So, but I don't understand the process either in terms of why the length of time, especially when you look at some of the relief funds. I know Community Futures was able to pull off some incredible resources, disperse a rapid relief fund for COVID. Some of the requests around extension, expansion of the IRP and the offloading of some of the resources should have happened by now. So I think this is more a question that you could ask either the minister directly or some of the staffers in the room. But I'm not positioned to answer that question. I'm pressing just, and I think that the campaign that CEDNet came up with is brilliant. If we can, because I know that in the last call that we met to Mr. Hussein, he did mention the importance of other ministers supporting and getting on board and understanding. So this campaign in terms of engaging other MPs, I think is a brilliant idea, but I don't think I can personally answer your question, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Okay, and thanks, Michael, for that question. I think we do have to wrap up. It's about 1 minute past the hour, and I know people probably have other meetings coming up. So I want to thank Béatrice and Victor and Wendy and Roz for your for sharing today, and thank everyone for joining us. And as I said, watch your email later this week for information about this campaign and what you can do to put pressure on your MP. And also we'll be sharing a recording of the webinar in the next few days as well. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, Sam.